In a town where power always sided with the privileged, a black man entered the bank to deposit his hard-earned check, only to have it ripped up, dismissed as fraudulent, and be publicly humiliated by the branch manager. The staff believed he was just another easy target, but within 10 minutes, the tables turned. He returned flanked by corporate heavyweights, invoking authority no one expected. One by one, the entire branch team was fired on the spot. Justice wasn't just served, it was delivered with dignity and unstoppable resolve. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The morning sun streamed through the glass doors of Magnolia Bank, casting long shadows across the polished marble floor. Malik Carter adjusted his navy silk tie and gripped his leather portfolio closer. Inside was a check worth more than most people in Brookview saw in a year, payment for months of his expert consulting work. The bank lobby hummed with quiet activity. Customers shuffled in line, tellers counted money behind their stations, and the security guard nodded respectfully as Malik passed. His Italian leather shoes clicked against the floor with each confident stride. After 25 years of building his consulting business, moments like these, depositing well-earned payments, still filled him with quiet satisfaction. An elderly woman with silver hair fumbled with her deposit slip at the counter. Malik stood patiently behind her, watching as she squinted at the small print. The teller's voice carried a hint of irritation. "Ma'am, you'll need to fill out a new slip. This one has too many errors." The woman's shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry, dear. These old eyes aren't what they used to be." "Here, let me help you," Malik offered, reaching for a blank slip. He guided her through the form with gentle patience, explaining each field clearly. "Thank you, young man," she said, patting his arm. "Such nice manners. Your mama raised you right." Malik smiled warmly. "That she did, ma'am. That she did." As the woman shuffled away, Malik approached the counter. The young teller's previous irritation melted into a practiced customer service smile. Malik placed his portfolio on the counter and extracted the crisp check, sliding it across the smooth surface. "Good morning. I'd like to deposit this, please." The teller's eyes widened slightly at the amount. She glanced uncertainly toward the glass-walled office where Douglas Whitman, the branch manager, sat reviewing documents. "One moment, sir. I'll need to get this approved." Malik nodded, maintaining his professional demeanor despite the familiar sting. He'd been banking here for years, yet large deposits still triggered special attention. He watched as the teller hurried to Whitman's office, speaking in hushed tones while gesturing at the check. Whitman's chair scraped against the floor as he stood, his imposing frame filling the doorway. His eyes locked onto Malik, narrowing with immediate suspicion. He strode across the lobby, snatching the check from the teller's hand. "Mr. Carter," Whitman said, voice dripping with false courtesy. "Quite a substantial amount here." He held the check up to the light, examining it as if it were counterfeit. "Yes, it is," Malik replied evenly. "The payment is for a 6-month consulting project I just completed." Whitman's lip curled slightly. "And who exactly would pay you this much for consulting?" The lobby had grown quieter. Other customers were watching now, some with discomfort, others with morbid curiosity. Malik felt heat rising in his chest, but kept his voice steady. "The Jensen Group. I've been advising them on their merger strategy." "The Jensen Group?" Whitman barked out a laugh. "One of the largest corporations in the state hired you?" His emphasis on "you" carried unmistakable meaning. "Yes, they did." Malik's hands remained relaxed at his sides, though his jaw tightened slightly. "You're welcome to contact their CFO to verify." "Oh, I don't think that will be necessary." Whitman's smile turned cruel. He raised his voice, ensuring everyone could hear. "Because this check is clearly fraudulent." The silence in the lobby became absolute. Malik's heart pounded, but his expression remained neutral. "Mr. Whitman, I assure you." Before he could finish, Whitman's hands moved with deliberate slowness. The sound of tearing paper echoed through the quiet space as he ripped the check in half, then quarters. "We don't appreciate criminals trying to scam our bank," Whitman announced, letting the pieces flutter onto the counter. "Perhaps you should try your con somewhere else." Malik stared at the torn fragments of his legitimate payment, each piece a testament to the humiliation burning through him. The other customers shifted uncomfortably. Some averted their eyes, while others watched with poorly concealed shock. The elderly woman he'd helped earlier pressed a hand to her mouth, eyes wide with distress. Years of facing similar indignities had taught Malik to wear dignity like armor. He straightened his spine, meeting Whitman's smug gaze with quiet intensity. "I see," he said, voice perfectly controlled despite the rage and hurt churning inside him. "Thank you for your time." With deliberate movements, Malik gathered the torn pieces of the check, sliding them into his portfolio. He could feel Whitman's eyes boring into him, waiting for an outburst, any excuse to call security. But Malik wouldn't give him that satisfaction. He turned, walking toward the exit with measured steps. The security guard who had nodded to him earlier now watched with obvious discomfort, hand resting nervously on his belt. The morning sun that had seemed so promising minutes ago now felt harsh and exposing through the glass doors. Outside, Malik paused on the bank's steps, drawing a deep breath of the warm summer air. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for his phone, but his fingers were steady as he scrolled through his contacts. 25 years of building his reputation, of proving himself in rooms where he was often the only black face, had prepared him for moments like this. He selected a number and pressed dial, holding the phone to his ear. The line rang once, twice, as he stared at the bank's imposing facade. Inside, he could see Whitman already returning to his office, clearly satisfied with his display of power. Malik's free hand clenched briefly, then relaxed. He had learned long ago that anger, while justified, wasn't as useful as action, and he had spent years building the connections and influence needed for moments exactly like this. The phone continued to ring as Malik waited, his expression now resolute. Behind him, the bank's doors opened and closed as customers came and went, life continuing its normal rhythm. But for Malik, standing tall despite the morning's humiliation, everything was about to change. 10 minutes later, the glass doors of Magnolia Bank swung open with purpose. Malik Carter strode back into the lobby, but this time he wasn't alone. Two sharp-suited figures flanked him, a tall woman with steel-gray hair carrying a leather briefcase, and a younger man whose corporate ID badge caught the morning light. The atmosphere in the bank shifted instantly. Customers who had witnessed the earlier incident straightened, sensing something significant was about to unfold. The teller who had first taken Malik's check visibly paled, her fingers freezing over her keyboard. "Mr. Whitman!" Malik called out, his voice carrying across the lobby with quiet authority. "Would you join us out here, please?" Inside his glass office, Douglas Whitman looked up with irritation that quickly morphed into uncertainty at the sight of the corporate representatives. He emerged slowly, tugging at his suit jacket, a forced smile plastered across his face. "Is there something I can help you with?" Whitman asked, his tone notably less confident than before. The woman with gray hair stepped forward. "I'm Patricia Holbrook, Chief Legal Officer for Magnolia Bank's parent company." She gestured to her companion. "This is Marcus Chen, Regional Executive Director." Whitman's smile faltered. Sweat began to bead at his temples. I wasn't aware we were expecting corporate visitors today." "Clearly," Malik said, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the tension building in the room. You also weren't aware that following the Jensen Group merger last week, I became one of Magnolia Bank's largest individual shareholders and newest board appointee. The color drained from Whitman's face. Several customers gasped. The elderly woman Malik had helped earlier pressed her hands together, eyes bright with anticipation. I didn't," Whitman stammered, looking desperately between the corporate representatives. "No, you didn't," Malik continued, his voice level but carrying an edge of steel. "Instead, you chose to publicly humiliate a customer, one who happens to be a respected business owner and now part owner of this bank, based on nothing but your own prejudices." The legal officer opened her briefcase, extracting several documents. "Mr. Whitman, your actions this morning constitute a clear violation of multiple bank policies, federal banking regulations, and anti-discrimination laws." Whitman's face had gone from pale to ashen. "Now, wait just a minute. This is all a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Marcus Chen interrupted, his voice sharp. "The incident was captured on the bank's security cameras. Multiple witnesses saw you destroy a legitimate check while making unfounded accusations of fraud. Customers were now openly watching, some even recording with their phones. The teller involved in the incident seemed to be trying to make herself invisible behind her counter. Malik stepped forward, standing directly in front of Whitman. "Douglas Whitman, as a major shareholder and board member of this institution, I am exercising my authority to terminate your employment, effective immediately." A collective murmur rippled through the lobby. Whitman's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "Additionally," Malik continued, turning to address the teller, "your employment is also terminated for your willing participation in this discriminatory incident." Security guards who had entered quietly behind the corporate representatives now moved forward. "Please escort Mr. Whitman and the teller to collect their personal belongings," Chen directed. "They have 15 minutes. The next quarter hour unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. Whitman, still protesting weakly, was led to his office under guard. The teller emerged from behind her counter, tears streaming down her face. Other employees watched in shocked silence as their former manager and colleague were escorted through their final moments at Magnolia Bank. Customers began speaking among themselves, their voices a mix of surprise and satisfaction. "Did you see his face? About time someone stood up to him. Never liked the way he treated people." Malik turned to address the crowd. "I apologize to everyone who witnessed both incidents today. This is not what Magnolia Bank stands for, and changes will be made to ensure nothing like this happens again." Several people broke into spontaneous applause. The elderly woman Malik had helped earlier wiped tears from her eyes, beaming at him with obvious pride. As security led Whitman and the teller toward the exit, the former manager's shoulders were slumped, his earlier arrogance completely deflated. He avoided meeting anyone's eyes as he clutched a small box of personal items. Patricia Holbrook addressed the remaining bank staff. "A temporary manager will arrive within the hour. Please continue serving our customers to the best of your ability." The lobby gradually returned to its normal rhythm, though excited whispers continued to circulate. Malik spoke quietly with the corporate representatives, signing several documents Patricia produced from her briefcase. As he prepared to leave, satisfied that the immediate situation had been handled, a gentle touch on his arm made him turn. An elderly black woman in a floral dress stood there, her eyes carrying decades of wisdom and concern. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, introducing herself as Mrs. Gloria Adams. "Might I have a word with you? In private?" Malik noted the urgency in her expression, though her voice remained barely above a whisper. He nodded, stepping aside with her to a quiet corner of the lobby. "Mrs." Adams glanced around carefully before speaking, her weathered hands clasped tightly together. What happened to you today? It's not an isolated incident. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the bank's parking lot as Malik and Mrs. Adams found a quiet spot near a row of crepe myrtles. The elderly woman's floral dress rustled in the gentle breeze, but her expression was grave as she looked up at Malik. "He's not the only one," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This bank's been bleeding our community dry for years." Her hands trembled slightly as she opened her worn leather purse, pulling out a small notebook. Malik listened intently, his earlier triumph fading as Mrs. Adams began sharing stories. She spoke of elderly neighbors who'd lost their homes through suspicious foreclosures, of small business loans denied without explanation, of savings accounts that mysteriously shrank. "My friend Martha," Mrs. Adams continued, her voice catching, "saved for 30 years teaching at Brookview Elementary. Last year, the bank claimed she'd withdrawn all her money, said she'd signed the papers herself." She shook her head slowly. "Martha can barely hold a pen now with her arthritis." Malik's jaw tightened. "Would you be willing to tell me more? Maybe we could talk somewhere more private." Mrs. Adams nodded, writing her address on a page from her notebook. "Come by this evening. I'll put on some coffee, and I'll tell you everything I know." Hours later, Malik pulled up to a modest craftsman-style house on Oak Street. The porch light cast a warm glow over carefully tended flower beds, and Mrs. Adams answered his knock before he could even lower his hand. "Come in! Come in!" She ushered him inside. The house smelled of coffee and something sweet. Banana bread, Malik realized as he followed her into a cozy living room. Family photos covered the walls, generations of smiling faces looking down at them. "Sit, please, Mrs. Adams gestured to an armchair while settling herself on the sofa. A thick folder sat on the coffee table between them. "I've been keeping records," she explained, opening the folder. "Started back in '85 when they denied my late husband's business loan. Something didn't feel right, even then." Malik leaned forward as she began spreading out documents. Newspaper clippings, handwritten notes, copies of bank statements. "The pattern's been there all along," she said, pointing to various papers. Black families denied loans despite perfect credit. Latino business owners given impossible interest rates. Asian customers questioned about every large deposit. She pulled out a map of Brookview, marked with red dots. Each dot is a foreclosure in our community over the last decade. Notice anything? Malik studied the pattern, his frown deepening. The dots clustered heavily in minority neighborhoods, forming an unmistakable pattern of targeted pressure. This one here, Mrs. Adams tapped a spot on the map, was the Johnson family home. 3 generations lived there until 2019. The bank claimed they missed payments, but Mary Johnson showed me her receipts. All paid on time every month. Didn't matter. They were out in 30 days. For the next 2 hours, Mrs. Adams methodically laid out story after story. Malik took careful notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. His corporate experience helped him spot the technical violations, the careful manipulation of policies that allowed such systematic abuse. "The young ones don't know most of this history," Mrs. Adams said, pouring them each a second cup of coffee. "But us old folks, we remember. We see the same tricks, just wearing new suits and using fancier words." She reached for a photo album, opening to a page showing a vibrant commercial street. This was Black Wall Street, our version of it, right here in Brookview. 30 years ago, these businesses were all Black-owned. Now, she sighed heavily, the bank found ways to push them out, one by one. Malik felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "Why hasn't anyone reported this? Taken legal action?" Mrs. Adams gave him a knowing look. "Who would believe us? Who could afford to fight? And those who tried..." She pulled out another list, this one showing names with dates. lost jobs, got harassing calls, found themselves under investigation for financial irregularities. The grandfather clock in the corner struck 9 as Malik helped Mrs. Adams gather the documents. She insisted on making him a package of banana bread to take home, wrapping it carefully in wax paper. "You're in a position to do what none of us could," she said at the door, her hand resting briefly on his arm. "But be careful, Mr. Carter. People with power don't give it up easily." The drive home gave Malik time to process everything he'd learned. The streets of Brookview looked different now, each closed storefront and abandoned building telling part of a larger story of systematic oppression. At home, Malik loosened his tie and settled at his desk, opening his laptop. The banana bread sat untouched beside him as he began searching through public records, cross-referencing Mrs. Adams's notes with official documents. Property transfers, tax records, foreclosure notices. He created spreadsheet after spreadsheet, mapping out the patterns Mrs. Adams had described. His corporate training helped him spot the careful paper trail of institutional racism, hidden behind bureaucratic language and technical procedures. The clock showed nearly midnight when he finally sat back, rubbing his tired eyes. His notes covered several pages, and his initial research had already revealed disturbing patterns that supported Mrs. Adams's claims. Tomorrow, he would need to dig deeper. But for now, the evidence was clear. This went far beyond one racist manager's actions. Malik saved his files and closed the laptop, the weight of what he'd discovered settling heavily on his shoulders. The faces from Mrs. Adams's photos seemed to watch him from his memory, waiting to see what he would do with this knowledge. Malik woke before his alarm, his mind already racing with the information from last night. He'd barely slept, the stories Mrs. Adams shared replaying in his thoughts. At his kitchen counter, he sipped strong coffee while organizing his notes into a detailed spreadsheet on his laptop. "Priority cases," he muttered, creating a new column. The Johnson family topped his list, followed by Martha Williams, Mrs. Adams's friend with the vanished savings. He added the names of former business owners from Black Wall Street, cross-referencing them with the map Mrs. Adams had shown him. By 7:30, Malik had compiled 20 names. He adjusted his tie in the hallway mirror, choosing his most approachable business casual outfit. No need to intimidate people who'd already been traumatized by banking officials. His first stop was the Johnson family. They'd relocated to a small apartment complex on the east side of town after losing their home. Mary Johnson, a woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair, answered his knock cautiously. "Mrs. Johnson? I'm Malik Carter." He offered his business card. "I'm investigating some concerns about Magnolia Bank's practices. Mrs. Adams suggested I speak with you." At the mention of Mrs. Adams, Mary's face softened. "Come in, Mr. Carter. Though I don't know what good talking about it will do now." The apartment was small but immaculate, family photos covering every available surface. Mary brought out a box of documents as they sat at her tiny kitchen table. "Everything was in order," she said, showing him years of payment receipts. "My daddy bought that house in 1962. We never missed a payment." Her hands trembled as she spread out the foreclosure notice. "Then, suddenly, they said we were 6 months behind. Showed papers with signatures that weren't ours." Malik examined the documents carefully, taking photos with his phone. "May I keep copies of these?" Next was Martha Williams, the retired teacher. He found her in a nursing home, her once steady hands now gnarled with arthritis. Her story matched what Mrs. Adams had shared. Lifetime savings vanished, with forged withdrawal slips as the only explanation. "Look at this signature," Martha said, pointing with a twisted finger. "They say I wrote this last year." She held up her hand, showing how her fingers wouldn't even wrap around a pen. "Been this way for 5 years now." Throughout the day, Malik crisscrossed Brookview, hearing story after story. James Chen, whose family restaurant had been seized after 20 years of operation. The Rodriguez family, whose construction company loan was suddenly called in during their biggest project. Sarah Thompson, an elderly widow who lost her home after the bank misplaced her insurance payments. At each stop, he saw the same pattern. Careful documentation by the victims, mysterious changes in bank records, signatures that didn't match, paperwork that conveniently disappeared. Many had tried to fight back, only to find themselves overwhelmed by the bank's legal resources. By late afternoon, Malik sat in his car outside what used to be Chen's family restaurant, now an upscale bistro. He reviewed his notes, seeing the bigger picture emerge. The bank hadn't just discriminated. They'd systematically targeted and dismantled the economic foundation of Brookview's minority communities. His next stop was Thompson's Barber Shop, one of the few original businesses still operating on the old Black Wall Street. Harold Thompson, the third-generation owner, shared stories of watching his neighbors and fellow business owners forced out one by one. They'd change loan terms without notice, Harold explained, sweeping hair from his floor. Raise interest rates, demand additional collateral. Always found some fine print to squeeze people with. Those who complained? Suddenly their credit scores would drop, or they'd get visits from bank auditors. As the sun set, Malik made his final visit to the Brookview Community Center, where he met with a group of former small business owners. They gathered in a circle, each sharing their experience with the bank's predatory practices. "It wasn't just Whitman," said Rebecca Foster, who'd lost her daycare center. "Every manager they've had, going back decades. Same patterns, same excuses, same results." Malik's notebook was full, his phone loaded with photos of documents and recordings of testimonies. The scale of the corruption was staggering. Not just individual acts of racism, but a coordinated campaign of economic destruction. Back in his car, Malik began organizing his day's findings into folders on his laptop. Each case reinforced the others, showing clear patterns of discrimination and fraud. He was so absorbed in his work that the buzz of his phone made him jump. The message was from an unknown number. "Some stories are better left untold. Consider your future carefully." Malik stared at the screen, his jaw tightening. The threat was clear, but carefully worded, just like everything else about this bank's operations. He saved a screenshot of the message, adding it to his growing file of evidence. Looking up, he noticed a black SUV with tinted windows parked across the street. It hadn't been there when he arrived. As he watched in his rearview mirror, the vehicle pulled away slowly, its driver hidden behind the dark glass. The gathered testimonies felt heavier now, each story a responsibility he couldn't ignore. The faces of everyone he'd interviewed flashed through his mind. Mary Johnson's trembling hands, Martha Williams's twisted fingers, Harold Thompson's weary eyes. Their trust in him outweighed any anonymous threat. Malik started his car, checking his mirrors carefully before pulling away from the curb. The threatening text glowed on his phone screen, a digital reminder that he'd struck a nerve. Someone was watching, someone was worried, and that only confirmed he was on the right track. Morning light filtered through the blinds of Brookview Coffee House as Malik reviewed his notes from yesterday. He'd chosen this quiet spot, away from the bank's prying eyes, for his morning meeting. The message on his phone had been clear. Someone was watching. The bell above the door chimed. A woman in her late 30s entered, wearing a navy blazer and carrying a leather messenger bag. She scanned the cafe before spotting Malik in the corner booth. Her steps were measured, cautious. "Mr. Carter?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm Alicia Chen." Malik gestured to the seat across from him. "Thank you for reaching out, Ms. Chen. Please, call me Alicia." She settled into the booth, placing her bag carefully beside her. "I've been the internal auditor at Magnolia for 6 years. What happened with Mr. Whitman? It wasn't an isolated incident. A waitress approached, and they paused their conversation to order coffee. Once she left, Alicia leaned forward. "I've been documenting irregularities for years," she said, her fingers drumming nervously on her bag. "At first, I thought they were mistakes. But the patterns," she shook her head. "They're too consistent to be accidents." Malik pulled out his notebook. "I spent yesterday collecting stories from victims. The targeting seems systematic." "It is." Alicia glanced around before opening her bag. She withdrew a thick manila envelope. "These are copies of internal documents. Loan applications that were flagged for special handling. Account records showing unauthorized transfers. Emails between executives discussing what they called community management." The waitress returned with their coffees. They waited until she was out of earshot before continuing. Malik examined the first document, a memo from the regional VP to branch managers. "This is explicit," he said, reading the coded language about maintaining neighborhood stability and protecting property values. "That's just the surface," Alicia said. She pulled out more papers. "Look at these property assessments. The bank consistently undervalued homes in minority neighborhoods, then partnered with developers to buy them at foreclosure. The same developers who make large contributions to local politicians." Malik spread the documents across the table, careful to keep them hidden from other customers' view. Loan rejection rates, property assessments, foreclosure notices, all showing clear patterns of discrimination. But what caught his eye were the email chains, revealing coordination between bank executives, city council members, and local business leaders. "How did you get these?" he asked. "I'm good at my job," Alicia said with a hint of pride. "Too good, apparently. Last month, they tried to transfer me to the Sacramento office. When I refused," she took a shaky breath. "Let's just say the pressure has been increasing." Malik noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands. "You're taking a huge risk showing me these. Someone has to stop them." Alicia's voice strengthened. "My family lost their restaurant because of practices like these. I became an auditor to prevent that from happening to others. But working inside the system," she gestured at the documents, "this goes beyond the bank. It's a network of corruption." They spent the next hour reviewing the evidence. Alicia explained the complex web of relationships between the bank, local government, and private developers. Property values were manipulated, loans were denied or called in strategically, and the profits were shared through a maze of shell companies. "The 4th of July festival is in 3 weeks," Malik said, organizing the documents into neat piles. "The whole town will be there, including the press. It would be the perfect time to expose everything." Alicia nodded slowly. "The bank's quarterly board meeting is the day before. They'll be discussing new urban renewal projects." She pulled out one more document, a proposal for massive redevelopment in historically black neighborhoods. "They're planning to accelerate the process. We need to act before more families lose their homes. We'll need to be careful," Malik said. "These people have resources, connections. They won't go down without a fight." "I've made copies of everything," Alicia said. "Multiple sets, stored in different locations. And I've been keeping detailed records of every interaction, every attempt to silence me." They began outlining their plan. Alicia would continue gathering evidence from inside the bank, while Malik worked with the community to collect more testimonies. They would prepare presentation materials, contact trusted media outlets, and arrange for legal support. "We should minimize direct contact," Malik suggested. "No calls or emails, everything in person, and only in secure locations." "Agreed." Alicia checked her watch. "I should get back. They track our lunch breaks." She stood, straightening her blazer. "Mr. Carter." "Malik, thank you. I've been carrying this knowledge alone for so long." "Thank you for your courage," Malik replied. "And Alicia? Be careful. Document everything, but watch your back." After she left, Malik remained in the booth, studying the evidence she'd provided. The scope of the conspiracy was staggering. Decades of systematic oppression, millions of dollars stolen from vulnerable communities, all hidden behind a veneer of legitimate banking. His phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. 3 weeks until the 4th of July festival. 3 weeks to organize the evidence, prepare their presentation, and ensure their safety. He looked at the chair where Alicia had sat, thinking about the risk she was taking. They were both putting themselves in danger, but the alternative, allowing this corruption to continue, was unthinkable. Dawn painted the sky in soft pinks and purples as Malik pulled into the empty parking lot of Riverside Park. He'd chosen this spot carefully, far from the bank, with clear sightlines in all directions. At this early hour, only dedicated joggers were out. He spotted Alicia's silver Civic parked near the walking trail. She sat at a weathered picnic table overlooking the river, a laptop and several folders spread before her. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass and blooming flowers. "Morning," Malik said, setting down 2 paper cups. "Brought you some coffee. You look like you haven't slept." "Thanks." Alicia wrapped her hands around the warm cup. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. "I spent half the night organizing these files. The deeper I dig, the worse it gets." Malik settled across from her, pulling out his own laptop. "Show me what you found." For the next hour, they meticulously sorted through documents, creating a clear timeline of the bank's discriminatory practices. Alicia had organized everything into categories: loan rejections, property devaluations, suspicious foreclosures, and internal communications. "We need to present this in a way that's impossible to ignore," Malik said, reviewing their growing outline. "Simple enough for everyone to understand, but detailed enough to stand up to scrutiny." Alicia nodded, pulling up a spreadsheet. "I've cross-referenced every transaction with public records. Look at this pattern." She turned the laptop toward him. Every time a minority-owned business applied for expansion loans, they were either rejected or offered terms that made acceptance impossible. But white-owned businesses in the same financial position? Approved with favorable rates. "Good work," Malik said, studying the data. "We'll need visual aids for the presentation. Charts, graphs, something that makes the discrimination obvious at a glance." They worked steadily through the morning, organizing evidence into clear, compelling segments. Alicia had created a detailed PowerPoint presentation, each slide building their case methodically. Malik focused on crafting the narrative, weaving individual stories into the larger pattern of systemic abuse. "What about security?" Alicia asked, glancing around nervously. "Once we go public, they'll try to discredit us. Or worse." "I've thought about that." Malik opened a new document. "We need multiple backups of everything. Cloud storage, physical copies in secure locations, trusted attorneys ready to move. And we need to protect ourselves legally." They spent the next hour establishing security protocols. No electronic communications about sensitive information. Regular meeting spots would change daily. All documents would be encrypted and stored in multiple formats. As the morning joggers began to thin out, Malik checked his watch. "It's time for Phase 1, he said, pulling out his phone. "We need to start building public interest." Alicia watched as he opened his social media accounts. "Are you sure about this? Once you post, there's no going back." "That's the point," Malik said, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "We need to create enough public attention that they can't quietly shut us down." He began typing, choosing his words carefully. "As a board member and major shareholder of Magnolia Bank, I am deeply troubled by what I've discovered about its practices. At the upcoming 4th of July festival, I will present evidence of systematic discrimination and financial misconduct that has harmed our community for decades. This isn't about one incident or one person. It's about years of intentional harm to minority businesses and families. The truth will come to light. Justice is coming. Fran Fiedin, Magnolia Bank Truth. Alicia read over his shoulder. Direct but vague enough to protect our evidence, she approved. The hashtags are a nice touch. Malik posted the message across multiple platforms. Within minutes, notifications began flooding in. Shares, comments, and reactions multiplied rapidly. Local community groups started sharing the post, adding their own stories of dealing with Magnolia Bank. "Look at this response," Alicia said, scrolling through the comments. People have been waiting for someone to speak up. They spent another hour monitoring the growing social media storm. Local news outlets began reaching out for comments. Community leaders shared their support. Even former bank employees started sending private messages, offering to share their experiences. "This is just the beginning," Malik said, closing his laptop. "We need to be ready for their response. They won't take this lying down." Across town, in his home office, Douglas Whitman stared at his computer screen, his face growing redder with each passing minute. The social media post had been forwarded to him by a former colleague, along with a message. "Thought you should see this." Whitman's hands clenched into fists as he read through the comments. People he'd done business with for years were now openly supporting Carter's crusade. His carefully maintained reputation was unraveling in real time. "How dare he?" Whitman muttered, pacing his office. The leather chairs and dark wood paneling that once projected power now felt like a prison. He'd already lost his position at the bank, and now this upstart was threatening to expose everything. He grabbed his phone, scrolling through contacts. Old friends in local government, business associates, former clients who owed him favors. It had taken decades to build his network of influence, and he wasn't about to let it be destroyed by some self-righteous whistleblower. "John, it's Doug Whitman," he barked into the phone. "We need to talk. Carter's become a problem." He paused, listening. "No, this is bigger than just me. If he starts digging into those development deals from the 90s, a lot of people could get hurt. We need to shut this down." He hung up and pulled up another number, his jaw set in determination. The morning sun cast harsh shadows across his face as he began making more calls, activating old alliances, calling in debts. With each conversation, his anger hardened into resolve. "You want to play hardball, Carter," he muttered, staring at the social media post that was now trending locally. "Let's see how you handle real pressure." He picked up his phone again, ready to make another call. Mayor Robert Allen's private study smelled of expensive cigars and old leather. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through heavy curtains, casting shadows across the worried faces gathered around his mahogany desk. Douglas Whitman sat in one of the high-backed chairs, his usual swagger replaced by barely contained rage. "This has to be handled delicately," Mayor Allen said, loosening his silk tie. "Carter's not some small-time troublemaker we can simply intimidate away." He tapped his fingers on a printout of Malik's social media post, which had gained thousands of shares in just hours. "He's destroying everything we've built," Whitman snapped, his face flushed. "That post is just the beginning. He's got internal documents, proof of the development deals, everything." Judge Harrison, a longtime ally in their schemes, cleared his throat. "How did he get access to those records?" "Has to be someone inside," Whitman said. "My money's on that auditor, Chen. She's always been too curious for her own good." The mayor stood, walking to his drink cabinet. Ice clinked against crystal as he poured 4 glasses of scotch. "Gentlemen, we need to be smart about this. Direct threats could backfire spectacularly, especially with Carter's position on the board. We could have the health department suddenly find violations at his consulting office. suggested City Commissioner Brooks, accepting his drink. Or maybe his car gets tagged for parking violations everywhere he goes. Think bigger, Whitman growled. What about those construction permits for his house renovation last year? I bet a careful review would find some serious safety concerns. Mayor Allen raised his hand. Start small. Pressure him from multiple angles. Make him feel watched, unsafe. If he doesn't back down, then we escalate. He sipped his scotch. And find out who's helping him. Cut off his support system. Across town, Malik sat in his home office, trying to focus on work, despite his constantly buzzing phone. Another private number flashed on the screen. He answered, keeping his voice steady. "Mr. Carter," a distorted voice said. "Accidents happen to people who don't mind their own business." Malik remained calm. "Is that all?" After a moment of silence, he ended the call, adding it to his log of harassment. 23 calls since morning, each one documented. His email pinged. The subject line read, "Last warning." The message contained pictures of him meeting with Alicia at the park that morning. His jaw tightened, but he refused to let fear take hold. He forwarded the email to his lawyer. The doorbell rang. Malik checked his security camera before opening the door. A courier handed him an envelope and hurried away. Inside was a newspaper clipping from 1963, showing a burned-out bank building. Red ink circled the headline, "Local businessman learns painful lesson about keeping quiet." "Getting desperate, aren't you, Douglas?" Malik muttered, adding the clipping to his evidence file. His phone buzzed again. A text from Mrs. Adams. "Two men in suits asking questions about you at the community center. Be careful." Malik walked through his house, checking windows and doors. The security system was armed, cameras active. He'd installed extra measures after the social media post, expecting retaliation. Still, the escalating harassment was wearing on him. At his computer, he reviewed the morning's developments. His post had sparked a movement. People were sharing their own stories of discrimination by Magnolia Bank. Local news stations were requesting interviews. Support messages flooded his inbox. A rock crashed through his kitchen window. Malik ducked instinctively as glass shattered across the floor. Attached to the rock was a note. "Back off, or the next one won't miss." He called the police, knowing they'd do little but wanting the incident documented. While waiting, he noticed a car driving slowly past his house for the third time that hour. He photographed the license plate. After the police left, having taken a report with visible disinterest, Malik paced his office. The harassment was following a pattern, starting with subtle warnings, escalating to property damage. What would come next? His security system pinged, showing movement in his backyard. Just a neighborhood cat, but his pulse quickened anyway. The walls felt closer, the shadows deeper. He picked up his phone, dialing Alicia's secure line. "Are you safe?" he asked when she answered. "Mostly," Alicia replied, her voice tense. "Someone broke into my car at the grocery store. Nothing taken, but my files were clearly searched. We need to meet, not at any of our usual spots." Malik checked his window again. "They're watching both of us now." "The old library on Pine Street," Alicia suggested. "It's under renovation." "The construction crew leaves at 4. Back entrance, second floor." 1 hour, Malik agreed. "Take different routes. Make sure you're not followed. We need to revise our security plans." "Malik?" Alicia's voice softened. "Are you sure you want to continue? This is getting dangerous." He looked at the broken glass glinting on his kitchen floor, the threatening note on his desk, the evidence of decades of discrimination and corruption they'd uncovered. "They're scared," he said firmly. "That's why they're pushing so hard. We can't back down now. Too many people are counting on us." "Okay," Alicia said. 1 hour. Be careful." Malik gathered his essential files into a secure briefcase. Through his window, he saw the suspicious car pass again, slower this time. Somewhere in the city, he knew Whitman and his allies were plotting their next move. The harassment would get worse before it got better. But as he prepared to leave, Malik remembered Mrs. Adams's face when she first told him about the bank's history of abuse. He thought of all the families who'd lost homes, the businesses destroyed, the lives derailed by systemic discrimination. Their stories fueled his resolve. He activated his security system and picked up his briefcase. Let them watch. Let them threaten. He had truth on his side, and truth had a way of demanding to be heard. The old library's second floor was thick with dust and shadows. Malik stood near a window, watching the street below through a gap in the plastic construction sheeting. The setting sun cast long shadows between the buildings, perfect cover for anyone watching. "Clear on your end?" he asked, as Alicia emerged from the stairwell, her footsteps nearly silent on the wooden floor. "3 different routes, like you said." Alicia joined him at the window, her normally neat appearance slightly disheveled from the careful journey. But there was a black SUV that seemed to show up too often. Malik nodded grimly. "Same one that's been circling my house, probably." He pulled out his phone, showing her the photos he'd taken. No plates visible, but it's definitely government issue. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. They moved away from the window to a dusty corner where old library tables were stacked. Alicia pulled out her laptop, hands shaking slightly as she typed in her password. "Look at this," she said, turning the screen toward Malik. "Someone tried to access my work computer remotely last night. IT flagged it, but the trace led nowhere." "They're getting desperate," Malik said, studying the security alert. The quiet of the empty library felt oppressive, making every small sound, the settling of old wood, distant traffic, seem threatening. A floorboard creaked somewhere in the darkness. Both froze, listening intently. After a tense moment, a rat scurried across the floor, disappearing behind a bookshelf. "We need to move fast," Alicia whispered, despite confirming they were alone. "They're going to figure out I'm the source soon, if they haven't already." "Let's head back to my place," Malik suggested. "I've got better security there, and we need to organize these new documents you've found." They left separately, taking elaborate routes to Malik's house. Alicia arrived first, parking her car in his driveway, while Malik did one final check for followers before pulling up to the curb. As they walked toward his front door, a sharp hissing sound cut through the evening air. Alicia turned toward her car, where all 4 tires were rapidly deflating, knife slashes clearly visible in the rubber. "Inside now," Malik ordered, ushering her through his door and quickly activating his security system. Through his front window, they watched as a figure in dark clothing melted away into the shadows between houses. "This is getting out of hand," Alicia said, her voice tight with anger and fear. She pulled out her phone to call the police, but Malik placed a hand on her arm. "Wait," he said. "Let me call someone I trust first." He dialed his lawyer's emergency number, quickly explaining the situation. "Document everything," his lawyer advised. "But be careful with the local police. I'm hearing concerning things about their involvement." Still, they had to report the vandalism. Malik called the police, and 30 minutes later, Officer Martinez arrived, looking bored before he even got out of his cruiser. "Probably just kids," Martinez said dismissively, barely glancing at the slashed tires. He didn't even take photos, just scribbled a few notes in his pad. "You want to file a report?" "Yes, we do," Malik insisted firmly. "And I want to know why the patrol car that usually monitors this street was absent for the exact 15 minutes this happened." Martinez's expression hardened. "Are you suggesting something, Mr. Carter?" "I'm stating facts, officer. I have security footage of that patrol car's regular schedule and tonight's suspicious absence." The officer's hand drifted to his belt, a subtle but clear intimidation tactic. "File your report online," he said coldly, turning back to his cruiser. "And Mr. Carter?" "Chief Daniels asked me to remind you that investigating private citizens could be considered harassment." After Martinez left, Malik and Alicia exchanged knowing looks. "The chief of police is involved," Alicia said quietly. "That explains so much about the past cover-ups." "We need protection we can trust," Malik said, already scrolling through his contacts. He found the number he was looking for, a private security firm he'd worked with during his consulting days, based out of the state capital. The call was brief but productive. Within an hour, 2 unmarked cars with highly trained security personnel were discreetly positioned near both their homes. The firm's owner, a former FBI agent, promised to have background checks done on all local police interactions with Magnolia Bank by morning. "They'll have teams monitoring us 24/7, Malik explained to Alicia as they waited for her tow truck. "Ex-military. No local connections. They'll also sweep both our homes and offices for surveillance devices." Alicia hugged herself, looking out at the dark street. "I never thought it would go this far. That they'd be this scared of the truth coming out." "That's exactly why we can't back down," Malik said, his voice firm. "Their desperation proves how important this is. Think about Mrs. Adams, about all the others who've suffered in silence." The tow truck finally arrived, and they watched as Alicia's car was loaded up. The driver, after a careful screening by Malik's new security team, would take it directly to a trusted mechanic outside the city limits. "Your security detail will drive you home," Malik told Alicia, nodding toward one of the unmarked cars. "They'll sweep your house first, then maintain a perimeter all night. We'll meet tomorrow at the secure location they've arranged." Before leaving, Alicia touched Malik's arm. "Thank you," she said softly, "for not backing down, for protecting me. Most people wouldn't risk so much for others." "This is bigger than us now," Malik replied, watching as she was safely escorted to the security vehicle. "And we're not alone anymore." As the cars pulled away, Malik stood in his doorway, surveying his quiet street. Somewhere out there, Whitman and his allies were realizing their usual intimidation tactics weren't working. Their next move would be even more desperate, but now he and Alicia were ready. Morning sunlight streamed through Malik's living room windows as people filed in, filling every available seat. The room buzzed with nervous energy as neighbors greeted each other, some meeting for the first time despite living streets apart for years. Mrs. Adams sat in the front, her presence lending gravity to the gathering. Malik stood by his fireplace, watching as his security team discreetly checked each arrival. The house had been swept for devices twice since dawn, and the street outside was carefully monitored. Still, he kept his voice low as he spoke with individual attendees, sharing only what was necessary. "Thank you all for coming," Malik began once everyone was settled. Nearly 30 people packed his living room, with more standing in the hallway. "I know many of you have concerns about what's happening at Magnolia Bank, and I want to be transparent about our progress." He carefully laid out the general situation, avoiding specific details that could compromise their investigation. "We've uncovered evidence of systematic discrimination and financial misconduct spanning decades," he explained. "But more importantly, we've found proof that this wasn't just a few bad actors. It was an organized effort to harm our community." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A middle-aged man in work clothes raised his hand. "Mr. Carter, they denied my business loan 3 times. Each time they lost my paperwork somehow. I had to close my shop." Others began sharing similar stories. A retired teacher described mysterious fees that drained her pension account. A young couple talked about their inexplicably rejected mortgage application despite perfect credit scores. Mrs. Adams stood slowly, her voice carrying clearly across the room. "My grandson tried to open his first account there. That man, Whitman, made him wait 4 hours, then claimed they needed his great-grandfather's death certificate for verification." She shook her head. "A checking account, mind you. Not some big loan." Malik nodded, letting each person speak. The shared experiences seemed to strengthen the group's resolve. He noticed people exchanging phone numbers, forming impromptu support networks. "What can we do to help?" asked a woman near the back, her question echoed by several others. "Stay united," Malik advised. "Document everything. If you've experienced discrimination at Magnolia Bank, write it down in detail. Dates, names, exactly what happened. We're building a comprehensive case, and your stories matter." He outlined a secure system for sharing information, emphasizing the importance of discretion. "There are people who don't want this truth exposed," he warned. "They've already tried intimidation tactics. But we're stronger together." A young man wearing a tech company logo stood up. "I can help set up an encrypted communication channel," he offered, "something they can't monitor or hack." Others quickly joined in. A retired legal secretary volunteered to help organize documents. A local pastor offered his church as a safe meeting space. The energy in the room transformed from nervous tension to determined purpose. "Remember," Malik cautioned, "this isn't just about individual incidents. It's about changing a system that's hurt our community for generations. But change doesn't come without resistance." He shared a sanitized version of recent events: the surveillance, the vandalism, the police indifference. "They're scared," he explained, "because when we stand together, we have real power." Mrs. Adams spoke up again, her voice stronger now. "My mother used to say, 'A whisper of truth becomes a shout when enough voices join in.' Look around this room. We're not whispering anymore." The meeting continued for another hour, with people breaking into smaller groups to share contact information and organize tasks. Malik watched as natural leaders emerged, taking responsibility for different aspects of their growing movement. Outside, parked 3 houses down in a weathered pickup truck, Douglas Whitman gripped his steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. Through binoculars, he watched the steady stream of people entering and leaving Malik's house. He recognized too many faces: customers he'd personally intimidated, accounts he'd manipulated, lives he'd impacted. His phone buzzed, a text from the mayor. "Control this now." Whitman's jaw clenched. He'd built his power through fear and isolation, keeping people too afraid or ashamed to unite. Now, watching the confidence in their faces as they left Malik's house, he saw his careful system crumbling. A security guard walked past his truck, looking too long in his direction. Whitman slouched lower in his seat, but the guard had already noted his license plate. His phone buzzed again, the regional VP this time. "Meeting. Tonight. No excuses." Inside, as the last guests departed, Malik sat with Mrs. Adams and a small core group of organizers. They reviewed action items, assigned responsibilities, and set up secure communication channels. "We've got people watching out on every street now," a retired postal worker reported. "Any suspicious activity gets logged and shared immediately." Mrs. Adams patted Malik's hand. "You've given people hope," she said softly. "Look how they're standing taller already." Malik smiled, feeling more optimistic than he had in days. The community's response had exceeded his expectations. Where Whitman and his allies relied on isolation and fear, this united front would be much harder to intimidate. "Just remember," he reminded the group as they prepared to leave, "we have to be smarter than them. No direct confrontations, no illegal actions. We win by exposing the truth, not by stooping to their level." Outside, Whitman finally started his truck's engine, his hands shaking with suppressed rage. The security guard was approaching again, this time with clear purpose. As he pulled away, Whitman caught a glimpse of Malik through a window, surrounded by people who should have feared him but now looked ready to fight back. The sunset cast long shadows across Malik's dining room table, where documents, laptops, and empty coffee cups covered every inch of space. Alicia Chen sat beside him, her normally pristine appearance showing signs of exhaustion. They'd been working for hours, meticulously organizing evidence for tomorrow's festival revelation. "Double-check these loan rejection patterns," Alicia said, sliding a folder toward Malik. "The statistical deviation is impossible to explain away. They'll try, but the numbers don't lie." Malik nodded, scanning the carefully annotated spreadsheets. "Good work. And the witness statements?" "All notarized and secured." Alicia tapped another stack of papers. "I've got digital copies encrypted and stored on 3 separate secure servers. Even if something happens to these physical copies, the truth survives." The kitchen timer chimed, and Malik stood to pour fresh coffee. Through his window, he noticed a police cruiser driving past, the 3rd time in 2 hours. His security team had reported increased surveillance all day. "They're getting nervous," he observed, handling Alicia a steaming mug. "Good," she replied, but her voice held a tremor. "The more they squirm, the more we know we're on the right track." They worked steadily through their checklist. Presentation materials were ready. Media contacts were confirmed. Legal representatives would be standing by. Community members were prepared to share their stories. "What about your personal safety?" Malik asked, noting how Alicia's hands shook slightly as she sorted papers. "You could stay here tonight." "The security team." "I'll be fine," she interrupted, attempting a smile. "They don't know I'm involved yet. I'm just the quiet auditor, remember?" A sharp knock at the front door made them both jump. Malik's security guard, Marcus, entered quickly. "Sir, there's unusual activity on the street. Multiple vehicles circling the block. I'd recommend." The lights went out, plunging the house into darkness. Malik reached for his phone's flashlight, but before he could activate it, the sound of breaking glass erupted from multiple directions. "Get down!" Marcus shouted, drawing his weapon. Malik grabbed Alicia's arm, pulling her under the table as heavy footsteps thundered through his house. Flashlight beams swept the rooms, voices shouted commands. Through the chaos, Malik heard papers scattering, drawers being yanked open, furniture overturning. "Police! Everyone stay where you are!" The lights suddenly blazed back on. Malik squinted against the glare to see his home swarming with officers in tactical gear. Chief Daniels stood in the doorway, his expression cold. "Well, well," Daniels drawled, surveying the scattered documents. "Looks like we got here just in time. Ms. Chen, you're under arrest for embezzlement and tampering with bank records." "What?" Alicia stood, her face pale but determined. "That's ridiculous. We have evidence that you've been manipulating accounts for months." Daniels cut her off, nodding to 2 officers who moved to handcuff her. "Very clever scheme. Almost got away with it." Malik stepped forward. "This is harassment. You have no grounds." "Actually, Mr. Carter," a new voice interrupted. The mayor himself walked in, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. "We have very solid grounds." Anonymous tip led to an internal audit that revealed quite a paper trail. Ms. Chen has been very busy. Malik watched helplessly as officers began collecting their carefully organized evidence, stuffing papers randomly into boxes. "Those are private documents. You need a warrant." "Right here," Daniels smirked, waving a paper. "Signed by Judge Harrison himself. We're seizing everything as evidence in Ms. Chen's criminal investigation." Alicia stood rigid as the officers cuffed her, her eyes meeting Malik's with a mix of fear and apology. "Don't let them," she began. But an officer grabbed her arm, steering her toward the door. "I'll call my lawyer," Malik called after her. "We'll have you out tonight." "I wouldn't count on that," the mayor said softly, moving closer to Malik. Judge Harrison doesn't grant bail to financial criminals. Too much flight risk. She'll be safe in custody, until after the holiday weekend at least. The threat in his voice was unmistakable. Malik watched as officers systematically dismantled their case, carrying away boxes of documents, laptops, even Alicia's personal notebook. His security team stood helplessly by, ordered at gunpoint not to interfere. "You know this is all fabricated," Malik said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "What I know," the mayor replied, "is that tomorrow's festival should focus on celebration, not baseless accusations. It would be a shame if anything disrupted our community's unity." He smiled, but his eyes remained cold, especially given recent tensions. Chief Daniels approached, holding Malik's laptop. "Everything's secured, sir. Ms. Chen is en route to booking." "Excellent work, Chief." The mayor turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Mr. Carter? I'd hate to see any other loyal bank employees face false accusations. Sometimes it's better to let sleeping dogs lie." The officers filed out, leaving Malik's home in chaos. Overturned furniture, scattered papers, broken glass from the windows they'd breached. It looked like a war zone. Marcus approached, holstering his weapon. "I'm sorry, sir. They had overwhelming force. We couldn't—" "Not your fault," Malik interrupted, moving to his window. He watched the police cars pull away, their red and blue lights reflecting off neighboring houses where curtains quickly closed. The mayor's black SUV followed, then the unmarked cars carrying his documentation. In the distance, he could just make out the police car carrying Alicia. She'd risked everything to help expose the truth, and now she was paying the price. Their carefully constructed case, built over weeks of meticulous work, had been destroyed in minutes. Malik sank into his chair, surrounded by the wreckage of his home and their plans. The festival was hours away. Their evidence was gone. Their key witness was in jail, and the message was clear: continue pushing, and others would suffer. The police car's taillights disappeared around a corner, taking Alicia and their hopes for justice with it. Malik sat in his destroyed living room, the weight of defeat pressing down on him, as silence settled over the neighborhood like a heavy shroud. Malik jolted awake to a soft, flickering light seeping through his curtains. His neck ached from falling asleep in his chair, surrounded by the chaos from last night's raid. Empty evidence folders and scattered papers covered the floor like fallen leaves. A gentle humming drew him to the window. His breath caught at the sight below. Dozens of people stood on his front lawn, each holding a candle that glowed golden in the pre-dawn darkness. At their center stood Mrs. Gloria Adams, her silver hair catching the candlelight as she led the gathered crowd in an old spiritual. The melody carried memories of countless past struggles, of resistance and resilience. Malik's security guard, Marcus, appeared beside him. They started gathering about an hour ago. Word spread about what happened last night. Mrs. Adams organized it. Moving quickly, Malik straightened his rumpled clothes and stepped onto his front porch. The singing softened as faces turned toward him, candlelight illuminating expressions of concern, support, and determination. Mrs. Adams made her way forward, her cane tapping softly on the walkway. "We heard what they did," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the morning stillness. "Breaking into your home, taking that brave young woman away, trying to silence the truth." She shook her head. "We've seen these tactics before, but this time, we're not standing quiet." "Mrs. Adams," Malik started, his voice rough with emotion, "I appreciate everyone coming, but they took everything. All our evidence, all our documentation. They took papers," Mrs. Adams interrupted firmly. "They can't take our stories. They can't take our truth." She gestured to the crowd. "Every person here has a story about that bank. About Whitman. About the system that's been crushing us for generations. Faces nodded in the candlelight. A young woman stepped forward, her waitress uniform indicating she'd come straight from her night shift. "My grandmother lost her house to their paperwork errors," she said. "I'm ready to tell that story." "They denied my business loan application 6 times, called out an older man. "Watched my white neighbor get approved first try, with worse credit." More voices joined in, each sharing fragments of injustice. Missing deposits, unexplained fees, rejected mortgages, forced foreclosures. Decades of systematic abuse poured forth in the pre-dawn air, each story adding fuel to Malik's rekindling determination. A police car cruised by slowly, its presence a clear attempt at intimidation. But instead of scattering, the crowd moved closer together. Mrs. Adams lifted her chin defiantly as it passed. "They think fear still works," she said, "that we'll back down like we used to. But seeing you stand up, seeing Ms. Chen risk everything to expose the truth, it's woken something in people. We're done being afraid." As if to prove her point, more residents were arriving, parking their cars and joining the vigil. Malik recognized faces from local businesses, churches, community centers. The crowd had doubled since he first looked out his window. "We've got lawyers working on Alicia's release," called out Reverend Jackson, his deep voice carrying authority. "The charges are clearly fabricated, but she needs to know we're standing with her." "And with you," added Mrs. Adams, reaching for Malik's hand. "You're not alone in this fight anymore." The sun was rising now, its first rays catching the tears on several faces in the crowd. Malik felt something shifting in his chest, the weight of defeat giving way to a renewed sense of purpose. "They didn't just attack me last night," he said, his voice growing stronger. "They attacked everyone who's ever been wronged by their corruption. Everyone who's lost money, homes, opportunities. Everyone they thought they could bully into silence." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the gathering. "The festival's in 6 hours," Malik continued. "They think without our documents, without Alicia, we can't prove anything. But Mrs. Adams is right. Our strongest evidence has always been our stories, our lived experiences, our truth." "Tell it!" someone shouted, and others took up the call. Malik raised his hand for quiet. "I'm still speaking at the festival, but I need your help. I need every person who's been wronged to come forward, to speak their truth publicly, on record, where they can't ignore us anymore." The response was immediate. People began organizing among themselves, sharing contact information, making plans to gather statements. Mrs. Adams pulled out a small notebook and began taking names. A young man in a delivery uniform raised his phone. "I've got video from 3 different incidents at the bank. Been saving them, waiting for a chance like this." "My aunt kept all her rejection letters," added another voice. 20 years worth. Shows the pattern clear as day. The energy was building, fear transforming into determination. Malik watched in amazement as the community mobilized, turning his front yard into an impromptu command center. People made calls, shared stories, coordinated schedules for the festival. Marcus approached with his phone. "Sir, social media's blowing up. People are sharing their bank stories with Drar and Magnolia Truth. It's trending locally." Mrs. Adams smiled at the news. "They thought taking your papers would silence us. Instead, they've opened the floodgates." The morning sun was fully up now, making the candles unnecessary, but no one moved to leave. If anything, the crowd was still growing. Cars honked support as they passed. News vans were starting to appear at the end of the street. Malik looked at the determined faces around him, feeling the strength of their collective resolve. The mayor and his conspirators had tried to crush their spirit through force and fear. Instead, they'd awakened a community's long-suppressed anger, its demand for justice. "We've got 6 hours until the festival," Malik announced. "Let's make them count." The July sun beat down on Brookview's Central Park as crowds gathered for the annual festival. Red, white, and blue bunting decorated every lamppost and storefront, a cheerful facade masking the town's underlying tension. Food vendors set up their stalls, children darted between carnival games, and a brass band warmed up near the main stage. Malik stood in the shade of a massive oak tree, watching the growing crowd while reviewing his notes one final time. His phone buzzed constantly with updates from supporters and well-wishers. The morning's vigil had sparked something powerful. People were still sharing their stories online, each new post adding weight to the evidence they'd lost. Marcus, his security guard, maintained a watchful presence nearby. They'd spotted several of Whitman's associates lurking at the festival's edges, along with an unusually heavy police presence. The message was clear. They were being watched. 10 minutes, Mr. Carter, called the festival coordinator, a nervous young woman who kept glancing toward the mayor's tent. Malik nodded, straightening his tie. He'd chosen his best suit today. Charcoal gray, crisp white shirt, his father's lucky tie pin, armor for the battle ahead. Mrs. Adams appeared at his elbow, accompanied by several community members who'd been at the vigil. "We've got people stationed throughout the crowd," she said quietly. "Any trouble starts, we're ready." "They've cut the official live stream," reported Marcus, checking his phone. "Says there are technical difficulties." Malik smiled grimly. "Good thing we brought our own equipment." He gestured to where Reverend Jackson's teenage son was setting up multiple phones on tripods, each logged into different social media accounts. They'd learned from the morning's success. The truth would spread, with or without official channels. The crowd was massive now, larger than any previous festival turnout. Malik recognized faces from neighboring towns, even a few from the state capital. Word had spread far beyond Brookview's borders. News vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching skyward like mechanical flowers. The mayor took the stage first, his usual festival welcome speech noticeably strained. His eyes kept darting to where Malik waited in the wings. The brass band played a few patriotic numbers, but the audience's attention was clearly elsewhere. The tension was palpable, like storm clouds gathering before a downpour. Finally, the coordinator announced Malik's name. The crowd's response was immediate and electric. Cheers mixed with scattered boos, people pressing forward toward the stage. Marcus moved closer to Malik, scanning for threats. Malik approached the microphone with measured steps, his heart pounding but his expression calm. The late afternoon sun caught his face as he looked out over the sea of expectant faces. Phones raised throughout the crowd, hundreds of personal live streams beginning simultaneously. "Good afternoon, Brookview," he began, his voice steady. "I'm here today to tell you a story. It begins with a check being torn up at Magnolia Bank, but that's not where it ends." He described that morning in detail. The humiliation, the assumptions, the casual cruelty of Whitman's actions. The crowd listened in tense silence as he connected his experience to the larger pattern, weaving in stories shared by community members. "But don't take my word for it," Malik continued, gesturing to the crowd. "Look around you. Ask your neighbors. How many of you have similar stories about Magnolia Bank?" Hands rose throughout the audience. Dozens, then hundreds. The visual impact was stunning. A forest of raised hands, each representing a personal injury, a silent testimony to years of abuse. For decades, this institution has preyed on our community. Malik's voice grew stronger. They've stolen homes through fraudulent foreclosures, denied loans based on zip codes and skin color, drained savings accounts through unexplained fees. They counted on our silence, our fear, our isolation from each other. Movement at the edge of the stage caught his attention. Police officers conferring with the mayor, who was gesturing angrily. Malik pressed on, knowing his time might be limited. "You may have heard that my home was broken into last night. That documentation was stolen. That my colleague, Alicia Chen, was arrested on false charges. They thought taking our evidence would silence us." He paused, letting the words sink in. They were wrong. The crowd stirred as people began standing up, holding papers aloft. Bank statements, rejection letters, foreclosure notices. The morning's organizing had borne fruit. Each document represented a piece of the larger puzzle, a fragment of the truth they'd tried to bury. "We don't need stolen files to prove what everyone here already knows," Malik declared. "The evidence is in our collective experience, in the patterns we can all see." A commotion erupted at the back of the crowd. People turned, a wave of movement rippling through the gathering. Malik squinted against the sun, trying to see what was happening. Through the parting crowd came Alicia Chen, still wearing yesterday's clothes but walking tall. She carried a thick manila envelope, and behind her came a team of suited individuals, FBI agents, their badges catching the sunlight. The mayor's face went pale. Several of his associates began quietly leaving their seats. Alicia reached the stage, climbed the steps with deliberate calm, and approached the microphone. Her voice was hoarse but clear. "Fortunately, Mr. Carter, we don't have to rely solely on verbal testimony." She opened the envelope, removing a stack of papers. "I've maintained off-site backups of all bank records for the past 5 years. Every transaction, every policy change, every internal memo, including emails discussing which neighborhoods to target, which loans to deny, which accounts to drain through hidden fees." She placed the documents on the podium along with a USB drive. "The FBI has copies of everything. So does the State Banking Commission. And now," she turned to face the crowd, "so does everyone watching these live streams." The explosion of sound from the audience was deafening. Cheers, shouts, cries of vindication rolled across the park like thunder. Malik stepped forward to steady Alicia, who looked exhausted but triumphant. "They thought they could silence us," she said quietly, for his ears alone. "They never understood. The truth always finds a way." The sunlight caught the stack of papers in Alicia's hands, making them gleam like sacred tablets. She organized them methodically on the podium while Malik adjusted the microphone. The crowd's initial roar had settled into an expectant hush, hundreds of phones still streaming every moment. "Let's begin with the numbers," Alicia said, her voice stronger now. She pulled out a spreadsheet, holding it up for the cameras. "This document shows loan rejection rates by neighborhood over the past 5 years. Notice how rejections in predominantly minority areas are nearly 8 times higher than in other parts of town, even when applicants had identical credit scores." Malik stepped forward, pointing to specific rows. "And here's where it gets interesting. These aren't just statistics. These are people's lives. Mrs. Adams, would you stand up, please?" The elderly woman rose slowly, dignity in every movement. "Mrs. Adams applied for a home improvement loan last year. Perfect credit score, owned her home outright. Denied." Malik's voice carried across the park. "But look at this internal memo from the same day." He held up another paper. Quote, "Adams' application denied per W's instructions. Property targeted for developer acquisition Zone D." A murmur ran through the crowd. In the VIP section, several town council members shifted uncomfortably. "W is Douglas Whitman," Alicia explained, pulling out more documents. "And here's his correspondence with Mayor Allen about those acquisition zones. Seems they had quite a profitable arrangement with certain developers." The mayor stood abruptly, but FBI agents had quietly positioned themselves near the exits. He sat back down, face ashen. "Speaking of profitable arrangements," Malik continued, "let's talk about the mysterious fees that kept appearing on certain accounts. He projected a series of bank statements onto the large festival screen. Notice a pattern? Every account holder affected lived in specific neighborhoods. Every fee was exactly $118.50. Small enough to avoid immediate suspicion, large enough to add up. Add up to exactly $2.7 million over 3 years, Alicia interjected, displaying another spreadsheet. Money that was funneled through a series of shell companies and eventually split between several familiar names. She began reading from a list. Douglas Whitman, $480,000. Regional VP Thomas Harrison, $625,000. Mayor Robert Allen, $890,000. Each name landed like a hammer blow. The rest was divided among various consultants, including 3 sitting council members and our own police chief. The police officers stationed around the park's perimeter looked increasingly uncertain, some quietly removing their badges. But wait, Malik raised his hand. There's more. Mr. Whitman, since I know you're watching this live stream, let's discuss your special arrangement with foreclosures. He described in detail how Whitman had systematically targeted specific properties, manipulating payment records, and deliberately misrouting mail to create artificial defaults. The evidence was damning. Emails, altered records, even photos of Whitman meeting with developers at exclusive restaurants. The crowd's mood shifted from shock to anger. Some people were crying, others shouting names of those who'd lost homes. Mrs. Adams stood again, her voice carrying clearly. My sister's house, the one her grandson was born in. That was you? Whitman was spotted trying to leave the park through a side gate. 2 FBI agents smoothly intercepted him, leading him back toward the stage. And Mayor Allen, Malik turned his attention to the VIP section. Would you care to explain these transfers from your campaign fund? The ones that coincidentally match deposits to offshore accounts held by your wife's maiden name? The mayor lunged for the microphone. This is slander. I'll have you arrested? Alicia cut in smoothly. Actually, that's what's about to happen to you. She nodded to the FBI agents, who were already moving forward. We've been working with federal investigators for weeks. Every document is authenticated. Every transaction traced. The crowd parted as more FBI agents led a handcuffed Douglas Whitman toward the stage. His usual arrogance had crumbled, replaced by desperate fear. You don't understand, he shouted at the crowd. We were protecting property values, maintaining standards. Standards? Malik's voice cracked like a whip. Like the standards you applied when you tore up my check? When you humiliated me in front of your customers? Those standards? Whitman fell silent, finally facing the sea of angry faces. People he'd dismissed, discriminated against, stolen from. The weight of their judgment seemed to physically crush him. The arrests continued methodically. Mayor Allen was led away in handcuffs, still blustering about his connections. The regional VP was found hiding in a festival porta-potty. 3 council members surrendered quietly, while others fled only to be caught by waiting agents at the park exits. For years, these people treated our community like their personal piggy bank. Malik addressed the crowd again. They thought we were powerless. They thought we were alone. They thought wrong. Alicia stepped forward, adding, every transaction, every illegal fee, every discriminatory decision will be reviewed. Every victim will be contacted. There will be restitution. The crowd's reaction was beyond anything the festival had ever seen. People were hugging, crying, shouting in triumph. Decades of suppressed anger and pain found release in a wave of pure vindication. Through it all, the live streams continued broadcasting. Phones captured every arrest, every revelation, every moment of justice finally being served. The truth they'd tried to bury was now spreading across social media, unstoppable and undeniable. This is what accountability looks like, Malik declared. watching as Whitman was placed in a federal vehicle. This is what happens when we stand together, when we refuse to be silenced, when we demand justice. Mrs. Adams made her way to the stage, tears streaming down her face. "All these years," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly quiet crowd. "All these years, they made us think we were crazy, that we were imagining things, that we deserved it." "Never again," Alicia promised, embracing the older woman. "Never again in this town." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the park as justice continued its methodical work. One by one, the architects of Brookview's corruption were led away, their power stripped, their schemes exposed to the unforgiving light of truth. Evening had settled over Brookview like a gentle blanket, the last rays of sunlight painting Malik's living room in warm amber tones. Mrs. Adams sat in his most comfortable armchair, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup of chamomile tea. Alicia perched on the couch nearby, her usual professional demeanor softened by exhaustion and relief. "I still can't believe we really did it," Alicia said, shaking her head in wonder. "When they arrested me yesterday, I thought—" Her voice caught. "But you didn't break," Malik responded, pride evident in his voice. He set down a plate of cookies Mrs. Adams had insisted on bringing. "That took real courage, Alicia." Mrs. Adams reached over to pat Alicia's hand. "Child, you stood tall when it mattered most. Just like my grandmother always said, character shows itself in the darkest moments." The room was filled with evidence of their victory. Newspapers spread across the coffee table, phones still buzzing with congratulatory messages, and a local news channel quietly reporting on the day's events in the background. 57 arrests so far, Malik noted, gesturing at the TV. "The FBI says there might be more as they follow the money trail." "And not a moment too soon," Mrs. Adams declared. "Did you see Martha Wilson at the festival? When they announced her mortgage had been fraudulent, that poor woman just collapsed right there. 30 years she's been blaming herself for losing that house." Alicia pulled out her tablet, already back in organization mode. "I've started categorizing all the cases. The restitution process will be complex, but I'm developing a system to ensure everyone gets heard." "That's why you're perfect for the new position," Malik smiled. The news had come through just hours ago. Alicia was being appointed as the bank's new chief ethics officer with a direct line to the Federal Oversight Committee. "Speaking of new positions, Mrs. Adams said, her eyes twinkling, "I hear the board's making quite an announcement tomorrow about you, Mr. Carter." Malik adjusted his tie self-consciously. "It's not official yet, but yes, they want me to head the new Oversight Committee. First order of business will be implementing those reforms we discussed." "Tell me again." Mrs. Adams leaned forward eagerly. "I want to hear every detail." "Well," Malik began, warming to the subject, "first, we're establishing a community review board for all loan applications. Complete transparency. No more hidden criteria or special instructions. Every rejection will require detailed documentation and be subject to appeal." "And don't forget the education program," Alicia added. "Free financial literacy workshops, especially for first-time homebuyers and small business owners. Plus, that beautiful idea about the legacy accounts," Mrs. Adams smiled. "Tell her about that one, Malik. We're creating a special program to review every foreclosure from the past decade," Malik explained. "Any family who lost their home due to discriminatory practices will have first right of refusal to repurchase at the original price, with favorable financing terms." Alicia pulled up another document on her tablet. "The national press is already calling it the Brookview model. I've had 3 calls today from other cities wanting to implement similar reforms. It's not just about fixing the past, though," Malik said thoughtfully. "It's about building something new. something that truly serves everyone in this community. As if on cue, his phone buzzed with another message. Malik read it and broke into a wide smile. "Well, speaking of new things, the board just approved my proposal for the bank's new name." Mrs. Adams clapped her hands together. "Oh, tell us. Though I think I can guess." "Carter Community Bank," Malik announced, a hint of embarrassment coloring his voice. "They insisted on using my name, said it would help restore trust. But the community part, that's what really matters." "It's perfect," Alicia declared, "especially with the new logo design we discussed. Those interlocking hands forming a home shape. A symbol of unity," Mrs. Adams nodded approvingly. "And protection." A comfortable silence fell over the room, broken only by the gentle clinking of teacups and the distant sound of children playing outside. The evening light had faded to purple, but none of them moved to turn on the lamps, content in the gentle twilight and their shared triumph. "You know," Mrs. Adams said finally, "my grandmother used to say that justice is like a seed. It needs good soil, tender care, and patience to grow. But once it takes root," she smiled at Malik and Alicia, "well, look at what blooms." "Speaking of blooming," Alicia reached into her briefcase, "wait until you see the preliminary numbers for our community reinvestment program. We're projecting we can approve at least 200 new small business loans in the first year alone." Malik leaned forward to examine the figures, but Mrs. Adams waved her hand dismissively. "Numbers can wait until tomorrow. Tonight is for celebrating." She raised her teacup. "To justice served. To truth revealed," Alicia added, lifting her cup. "To community restored," Malik finished, completing the toast. They sat together as evening deepened into night, sharing stories and plans, occasionally interrupted by well-wishers calling or stopping by. Each time the doorbell rang, someone from the neighborhood would appear with a dish or a card, or simply heartfelt thanks. The local news continued its coverage in the background, showing footage of the day's events, the arrests, the revelations, the community's reaction. But here in Malik's living room, the real story was being written in quieter moments. In Mrs. Adams's proud smile, in Alicia's determined note-taking, in Malik's steady presence. Tomorrow would bring press conferences and official announcements. There would be paperwork to file, systems to rebuild, trust to restore. But tonight was for these three architects of change, sharing tea and cookies, watching justice bloom in real time. A week had passed since justice first bloomed in Brookview, and now Malik Carter stood before the freshly painted facade of Carter Community Bank. The old Magnolia Bank sign had been replaced with a new logo, interlocking hands forming the shape of a house, gleaming in the morning sun. The crowd that gathered for the reopening ceremony filled the entire block, their excited chatter creating a wave of hopeful energy. Malik adjusted his tie, taking in the transformed space. The bank's intimidating marble columns had been softened with planters full of bright flowers. The tinted windows had been replaced with clear glass, symbolizing the institution's new commitment to transparency. Most striking was the community mural on the side wall, faces of all colors and ages, painted by local artists, representing the true heart of Brookview. Mesjid Adams sat in a place of honor in the front row, resplendent in her Sunday best. A bright yellow hat perched proudly on her silver hair. Beside her, Alicia Chen looked sharp in a navy suit, her tablet ready as always. But now there was an ease to her posture that hadn't existed before. Both women beamed with quiet pride. The mayor's replacement, a respected local judge who'd been sworn in just days ago, stepped forward to introduce Malik. The crowd's applause was immediate and genuine, spreading like a warm wave across the gathered faces. "Thank you all for being here today," Malik began, his voice carrying clearly across the hushed gathering. "1 week ago, we stood together and declared that change wasn't just possible, it was necessary. Today, we're not just reopening a bank. We're opening the doors to a new chapter in Brookview's story." He gestured to the building behind him. Carter Community Bank isn't just a name change, it's a promise. A promise that financial security and opportunity belong to everyone in this community. No exceptions, no fine print, no hidden agendas. Malik paused, making eye contact with familiar faces in the crowd. He saw Martha Wilson, the woman who'd lost her house, now sitting tall with renewed dignity. There was James Thompson, the local mechanic who'd been denied loans 7 times under the old regime, his young daughter perched on his shoulders. "Today, I'm proud to announce several initiatives that will help make that promise real," Malik continued. First, the Carter Community Youth Scholarship Fund. Every year, we will provide full college scholarships to 10 promising students from our community, with priority given to those who've been affected by past banking discrimination. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Parents hugged their children closer, hope shining in their eyes. Second, our reparative justice program begins today. Our team has identified over 300 families who suffered direct financial harm under the previous administration. Starting this morning, we will begin the process of making those families whole again. Mrs. Adams dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief as several elderly community members nodded solemnly. "But perhaps most importantly," Malik said, his voice warming, "we're introducing new leadership that will ensure these changes last. I'm honored to announce that Alicia Chen, whose courage helped expose the truth, is being promoted to Chief Ethics Officer with expanded oversight powers." Alicia stood, acknowledging the applause with a modest nod, but Malik could see the pride in her stance. "And it gives me particular pleasure to announce that Mrs. Gloria Adams has agreed to serve as the inaugural chairperson of our Community Advisory Board. Her wisdom and unwavering integrity will help guide us forward." Mrs. Adams rose slowly, her yellow hat catching the sunlight like a crown. The applause was thunderous, accompanied by cheers and a few amens from the crowd. After the ceremony, as staff prepared to open the doors for the first official day of business, Malik found himself surrounded by well-wishers. Children asked for high fives, elderly community members wanted to share stories, and young entrepreneurs eagerly discussed their business plans. The day passed in a blur of positive energy. Malik watched as the first new accounts were opened, as small business owners submitted loan applications without fear, as teenage students eagerly signed up for financial literacy workshops. Every hour brought fresh evidence that change was really happening. As evening approached, Malik decided to walk home instead of driving. The summer air was warm and sweet, carrying the scent of blooming jasmine from neighborhood gardens. He passed the local diner where Mr. Thompson was closing up, and they exchanged friendly waves through the window. On Cedar Street, children played basketball in a driveway, their parents chatting on the porch without the worried expressions Malik had grown used to seeing. An elderly couple walked hand in hand, nodding to him with genuine warmth rather than the cautious deference of before. Outside the community center, a group of teenagers was hanging up posters for the upcoming financial literacy workshop. One girl spotted him and called out, "Mr. Carter, I'm definitely signing up. I want to learn how to start my own business someday." Malik smiled, remembering his own youthful dreams. "That's exactly what these programs are for," he replied. "Dream big." Near the park, he passed Martha Wilson tending to her new garden. She'd used part of her reparation payment to buy her dream house, just 2 blocks from where she'd lost her previous home. The pride in her gardening reminded Malik of Mrs. Adams's words about justice being like a seed. The streetlights began to flicker on, casting warm pools of light on the sidewalk. Malik noticed how many more people were out walking, visiting neighbors, simply existing in their community without fear. The invisible weight that had pressed down on Brookview for so long seemed to have lifted. A group of young professionals, a mix of races and backgrounds that would have been unusual in the old Brookview, sat chatting at the new coffee shop's outdoor tables. Their laughter carried on the evening breeze, uninhibited and free. Malik paused at a corner, taking in the peaceful scene. In windows up and down the street, lights glowed warmly, each one representing a family whose future now held more possibility than before. The community's strength had always been there, he realized. It had just needed the chance to shine. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.